Go ahead and call our meeting to order, and if I please get the city clerk to read the remote meeting instructions.
Pursuant to Governor Inslee's emergency proclamation regarding suspending certain provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act during the COVID-19 outbreak, the Toppenish City Council will not accept in-person public comments. All members of the public wanting to comment on City Council agenda items may submit written comments to include your name and address for the record in advance by email to cityclerk@cityoftoppenish.us by 4 p.m. on February 22, 2021 to be read during the meeting. Call-in information for listen-only mode is 253-215-8782, meeting ID 863-1603-8797, passcode 110983. Email cityclerk@cityoftoppenish.us or call 509-865-6754 with questions.
Thank you. If we'd all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag,
States of America,
of America,
the republic for which it stands, one nation,
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with justice for all.
justice for all.
Justice for all.
Our city clerk would please do roll call.
Mayor Oakes,
I'm here.
Mayor Pro Tem Saavedra,
Here,
Councilmember Belton,
Here.
Councilmember Seha,
Here.
Councilmember Duval,
Here.
Councilmember Garcia,
Here.
Councilmember Jimenez.
Present.
Let the record show we do have full attendance and a quorum.
And item 3, approve the agenda for tonight. I'd
I
entertain
make
a
a
motion.
motion that we approve the agenda for tonight in its entirety.
I second it.
Thank you. I have a motion on the floor from Councilwoman Jimenez and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem to approve the agenda for tonight. All in favor signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 4. Advance public comments received by 4 p.m. on February 22nd, 2021 to be read by staff at the meeting.
Mayor, let the record show the city did not receive public comment by the stated deadline.
Moving on to item 5, the consent agenda. All matters on the consent agenda have been provided to each council member for review and are considered to be routine or have been previously discussed and will be adopted by one motion and vote without discussion. However, if a council member desires, any item on the agenda will be discussed before any action is taken on it. Item 5A, approve minutes of the February 1st, 2021 study session. 5B, approve the minutes of the February 8th, 2021 regular council meeting. Item 5C, approve payroll checks numbered 35205 through 35215 and the electronic transfer in the total amount of $227,371.06 dated February 18th, 2021. Item 5D, approve claims check numbered 93286 through 93354 and the electronic transfer in the total amount of $240,703.41 dated February 22nd, 2021 and void checks NR 93259 and NR 93259-2. I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve that the consent be adopted in its entirety.
I'll second that.
Thank you. I have a motion on the floor from Mayor Pro Tem Saavedra and seconded by Councilmember Garcia to approve the consent agenda in its entirety. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? Moving on to item 6, new business. Item 6A would be AB 21-010, Ordinance 2021-02, amend Chapter 15.01 of the Toppenish Municipal Code. City Manager Hood.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. Before you is, once again, I'll recap is Ordinance 1501.010 is the adoption of the reference codes to the National Flood Insurance Program that were adopted in 2019. This brings our codes up to date, and we have Victor Shaw, our permit coordinator, here to present on this item.
Thank you, Lance. Mr. Mayor and Council, Victor Shaw, permit coordinator. And there are two agenda bill and ordinances on tonight's agenda for council consideration. The ordinance 2021-02 and 03. So I'd like to cover them together because they are really interlinked, how they're brought forth. So as I was going through this, I thought a little bit of history about the flood ordinances for the city. The city of Toppenish entered the National Flood Insurance Program in 1975. In 1978, all lands north of the railroad tracks were designated as being in the 100-year floodplain. And then in order to remain in the insurance program, the city adopted the flood damage prevention chapter, and that's chapter 1530. That was done in 2007, was updated again in 2012. The purpose of this code is to ensure that all construction in the 100-year floodplain is done to prevent and minimize damage from a major flood event. In 2019, Washington State Department of Ecology updated the Washington State Model Flood Damage Prevention Ordinance. All jurisdictions that participate in the National Flood Insurance Program are required to adopt this state model in their flood code, but these jurisdictions were given flexibility to only adopt those portions of that code that apply to their geography. So for example, the city of Toppenish, we don't need the sections about tsunami in our regulations. So with that, I participated in a joint exercise with the Department of Ecology to amend Chapter 13 or 1530 flood damage prevention to align with that state model ordinance. Ordinance 2021-03 contains the federal and state regulatory requirements for local flood damage prevention regulations. It strengthens flood damage prevention measures. And most importantly, it allows the city residents to continue participation in the National Flood Insurance Program. I thought I'd go over a few of the specifics of what this ordinance does. It greatly simplifies the text of Chapter 1530, making it easier to administratively enforce. It properly identifies the floodplain administrator as the city manager. This provides the correct level of authorization in the Toppenish Municipal Code in the event of a major flood, and then also for any flood area designation changes for circumstances like annexations and subdivisions. It establishes variance criteria concerning flood damage prevention, and it would require the hearing examiner to adhere to Chapter 1530 when granting variances in the floodplain. It provides specific regulations for development and construction in the floodplain that will reduce the risk of damage in the event of a major flood. And it requires that certain accessory structures be built to prevent flood damage. And this is a new requirement. And then this requirement in the flood code then necessitates a change in the building code that has been adopted by the city. So with that, I'll switch over and I'll talk a little bit about Ordinance 2021-02, which is an amendment to the international and residential building codes that are adopted by the city. The amendments to Chapter 1530, which is the flood code, requires that all apparent structures, detached garages, and small storage sheds that are built in the 100-year floodplain be built to prevent flood damage. The majority of these types of structures currently do not require a building permit, so they're exempt from the building code. So example, like the small storage shed you might see someone buy from Home Depot, that currently is exempt from the building code. So as I just said, the International Building Code and residential codes currently exempt these small structures from needing a permit. But these exemptions are not specifically listed like in the flood code. So for example, in the flood code, they have that list of detached garages, small storage sheds. In the residential code, they're listed by the square feet of the building. So for example, a residential building less than 200 square feet is exempt from the building code. So what this ordinance would do would remove those exemptions for these types of structures being built in the 100-year floodplain, and it would require a building permit for any type of construction. The permit requirements for these structures are minimal compared to that of a larger structure. So basically what these structures have to be is they have to be made of flood resistant material, and they have to be anchored to prevent flotation in a flood. So with that, now I'd like to take a moment and answer a few questions from Councilmember Duval that were provided to us before the meeting. So I'll just go through her questions here. One of her questions was, how much would a building permit cost for residents wanting to build structures in the floodplain? So I guess that's kind of a twofold answer. For the ordinance 2021-02, which would bring these other structures requiring a building permit, that would be the minimum fee for building permit, which is $24. If it's for other construction already controlled by the flood code and the building code, those building permits are based on the cost of the valuation of the building. So that's price structure is already in place. How would someone get this permit? So basically they would contact me. A lot of times they'll submit the application, and then I'll go through the code and determine what requirements their particular building would need. You asked how many houses or residents does the Toppenish city limit have in the floodplain? So basically, that's the floodplain is everything north of the railroad tracks. So it's approximately about half of the city. I don't have the exact number of how many houses or residents or businesses that encompasses, but I hope that kind of gives you an idea of the part of the city that's in the floodplain and that these two ordinances apply to. And then you ask, what about existing structures listed in the ordinance? Would property owners need to make renovations, or would they be grandfathered? So the question is no, existing structures would not have to come up to the flood code, so they are grandfathered. The exception to that answer would be is if They wanted to do a remodel that exceeded 50% of the valuation of the structure, or if the structure was damaged, like in a fire or a flood, and that damage exceeded 50% of the structure, then the whole structure has to be brought up to the flood code. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions that the council may have.
So I don't know if these are questions. Oh. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll wait, Clara, go
I
ahead.
don't know if these are, thank you. I don't know if these are questions or more of my concerns. And I did read everything you've got in there. And honestly, I think some of that is silly because they would have to get a permit for a playhouse. And I thought, are you kidding me? We're going to make people who are trying to make their neighborhood better, who are trying to provide a safe playground for their kids, we're going to charge them a permit fee, which if I happen to be a little, back in the olden days, always considered the poor part of town. So we're going to have the people who live in the poorest part of town have to pay more to live in the better part of town. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think that, because first of all, yeah, they have to pay a permit, which you make it sound like it's not a big deal. It's $24 minimum. But then you're also telling me that they now need to get certain sort of material, building material that's sturdier to sustain this flood. Well, that's going to cost them more money than if I lived on the other side of town. And then you're telling me that the insurance, well, some of us that live in these side of town cannot afford the insurance to begin with because it is so expensive. And here we are now as a city, instead of trying to promote to go ahead and make your neighborhood and your home look better and provide a safer playground for your children, we're going to now punish them and have them pay more. And I don't think it's fair. I mean, my mind tells me, yeah, it's fair. We need to do this, blah, blah, blah. But my heart says, when is enough enough? These people can't afford any more of this. And I personally, looking at it now, and I read all of it, yeah, I don't like it. I know how I'm voting, because I am not going to tell somebody you need to pay a permit fee for a playhouse for your kids. I just think it's silly. And it's not fair. It's not going to be the same for the whole town. You're only going to punish them because they could only afford to live on this side of town. I don't think that's right. I just don't agree with it. Oh, Peter, go ahead.
So my question was in regards to the need for having this amendment in regards to the structures that are, like you were saying, detachable and storage sheds and things like what's the need for us to do that, or the motivation for that to be brought before the council?
So I'd like to address that. So when I went through my initial session with the Department of Ecology, I have to admit I kind of had the same reaction that the council is expressing. But to require these small structures, for example, to be built out of flood-resistant material. So example, from solid wood versus cheaper plywood, exactly. So if it's just a high water flood event that the city experiences, those smaller storage sheds or playhouses that are built out of that press board, they get ruined. But if they're built out of solid wood or vinyl or metal, then they survive the flood. They don't get damaged. So there's one reason for it. Another explanation, and I got this from Department of Ecology, is like the Home Depot storage sheds you'd have in your backyard. The items that you may put in there, your lawnmowers and etc. Well, a riding lawnmower, for example, I mean, that's fairly expensive. And again, if you have a flood event that has current to it and the building is not secured to the ground, it can wash away. if it's actually built according to, what the flood ordinance will have, it needs to be of solid material and anchored to the ground, at least after the flood. You still have your lawnmower, might be damaged, but you still have it. So those are a couple examples as I went through my initial training with the Department of Ecology. So I don't know if that answers your questions or not, but those are a couple of the reasons why the model flood ordinance from ecology has that requirement.
And if I can add, the purpose for the permit is solely for someone from the city to go and inspect just the asphyxiation to the property. We're not inspecting the building, the shed, the playhouse. It's just to make sure that, yes, it has been reinforced and it meets the requirements of the code. So the $24 is recouping the cost of having an inspector go out and make sure that has been done per the code.
Again, it's a playhouse. I don't understand why I would need you to come and look at it. I mean, I lived here on East Side forever. And yes, I was one of the individuals who was here when we had the flood. And yes, I had a metal shed. And yes, it was ruined. So even metal sheds can be ruined. Mine was. So I had to get rid of it. It was anchored, but it was also bad with all the stuff coming too. But to me, I just think it's brother trying to take little kids' money away. And I just don't think this is right. I think we need to really look at this before we start doing that, because it's not fair to the people who live on the east side of town have to pay more money.
Lance, what effect does this have of not passing these ordinances on the city's capability of having flood insurance?
Well,
It's been designated a flood area, but the city didn't do that. The city didn't say everybody on the north side of town, sorry, but you got to do this. That was done by other people. So what's the effect on the insurance?
okay, what would happen is then we would be out of compliance with the National Flood Insurance Program. And if there would be, this as a city, and if there would be an event, then those people that would lose those items would not be eligible for FEMA to help replace those. And this kind of came up the last time we did that also. The school district had some what do you call those, freight boxes that they're storing their softball equipment in. They were sitting over there by the old high school, but they were in the floodplain. Remember, the floodplain is defined by everything north of the railroad tracks, between the railroad tracks and the river. When the railroad tracks were built, they're elevated up 2 or 3 or 4 feet, and that creates a dike all the way from basically Parker all the way past. So everybody on that side enjoys being in the floodplain. And this is one of the requirements that FEMA is as they update these ordinances and programs to hopefully reduce the amount of damage that would happen if there would be an event. And so it's a continual update. We're going to experience that. These are required updates by RCW that have already been adopted by the state of Washington, and we need to come into compliance and do that. Yeah, it's not fair. It's an expense. We're trying to keep that down as low as possible, but we need to keep those to be in compliance. If those buildings, if they're not anchored down, they can pick up with the water, go down and do damage to the next home or down the street, or they could go down and pile up at a certain spot and change the flow of the water that could affect another part of town or another area. It's a lot of hypothetical stuff, but those are the requirements that we have to comply with.
Right. And Lance, if I could, I can also add some information to your question. Currently, there are 257 residences within the floodplain that have national flood insurance. Right now, their average annual premium is $731. If they lost that, if the city lost their rating, those residents would have to go out on the the open insurance market and buy their flood insurance. Flood insurance is often, or is required if you have a mortgage. And under the National Flood Insurance Program, there's $52,533,000 of worth of coverage to the city residents in the floodplain.
And that is, we would lose coverage for the whole city. So even our city properties would no longer be, it's not just the properties that don't want to participate. It would be as a condition for the whole city to get coverage, we have to adopt this ordinance.
So it basically sounds like we don't have a choice.
Well, I
If we want
mean,
to keep insurance, we
Right.
don't.
We have a choice to keep insurance, so
Mhm.
unfortunately, yeah.
So Victor, you're saying if we don't adopt this, our insurance, our flood insurance would go up for everybody? Do you know how much?
That number I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know what flood insurance would cost if someone just had to add it onto their private homeowner's insurance without being in the National Flood Insurance Program.
But bottom line, FEMA, if we don't adopt this, we're done. We're not gonna get any assistance from them whatsoever.
Correct.
Correct,
And that's for the whole city,
correct.
not just the north side that has been designated a floodplain.
Mhm.
Mhm. And that's just the one ordinance, the 2021-03.
So just kind of recap those questions.
Mhm.
Everything between the railroad tracks, which is a man-made dike, and the Yakima River are in the floodplain. The existing structures, whatever that are already built, don't need to comply unless they're grandfathered in, and they don't need to comply unless they're remodeled. What else? What were the other questions? Yeah, and basically, if somebody wanted to know if they were in the floodplain, yes, they are if they're in that area. But if they came to the city for a permit, it's one of our requirements is to inform them if they're in the floodplain and what the additional regulations would be to be able to comply.
Yes, and also just to recap, so it is ordinance 2021-03 that requires these small structures to be built in a manner that are flood proof. And then it would be the building code would be the mechanism to ensure that that happens.
That's the first ordinance that we're discussing.
Correct.
Well, I do want to say that I think my mom was telling me that per year she pays over $2,000 in flood insurance. So, I don't, $24 for a permit versus an increase to that amount, I think is better in my opinion right now.
Yeah, and again, anybody that's in that floodplain that has a mortgage are required to carry that flood insurance. I mean, that's
Yep.
not the city requiring that.
FEMA requires that, and the lending agency to protect their investment. So,
Any
I don't
further-
like it either.
Oh, nobody
I
likes
I don't like the fact that it's going to affect the majority of the much lower income people of the city because, we all know the zones in our city and we're aware of the demographics of the people that live in certain areas of the city. So I'm not comfortable with it. And I think it made me even more uncomfortable to know that it doesn't even really seem like we can not adopt it. Like that we don't really have a choice in regards to not adopting it, because then the impact to the city residents would be much greater than it would be if we adopted it, and then it would be still impacting some people, but again, the city residents are a bit more underserved.
And we do, for the past 2 years, we have only issued one permit per year in that area
Mhm.
for folks that were doing work, remodeling work on their, major remodeling on their house. So it would be when someone were to come in and apply for a permit for a storage shed, that's when that requirement would be imposed on them.
Mhm.
Well, I
But
don't
people don't
necessarily,
tend to get permit.
I don't necessarily like it
I
either,
hear
but
what you're
welcome to
saying.
government regulations.
Yeah.
Okay, so in
really?
that case, I would like to move to approve this ordinance. 2021-03. Um,
2 and 3.
Yeah, we need to do, well, we gotta do them one at a
do
time.
we need to vote for both separate or
separately.
together? Okay, so motion to adopt ordinance 2021-03 to
Well,
amend
no,
section.
we're on
Is
02.
that correct? The right one?
We're on 02 right now.
Sorry,
It's okay.
I went to the wrong one. Sorry, guys. Ordinance 2021-02 to amend chapter 15.01 of the Toppenish Municipal Code.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. We have a motion on the floor from Mayor Pro Tem Saavedra and seconded by Councilman Belton to approve ordinance 2021-02, amend chapter 15.01 of the Toppenish Municipal Code. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
The ayes are going to have it. Motion passes. We will move on to 6B, which is AB 21-011, ordinance 2021-03, amend chapter 15.30 of the Toppenish Municipal Code. We have a motion.
I will move to adopt ordinance 2021-03, amend chapter 15.30 of the Toppenish Municipal Code.
and I'll second that.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Belton, seconded by Councilwoman Duvall, to approve ordinance 2021-03, amend chapter 1530 of the Toppenish Municipal Code. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, signify by aye.
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 I,
Any opposed?
Aye.
The ayes would still have it for approving ordinance 2021-03. At this point, we'll move on to item 6C, AB 21-012, resolution 2021-09, approve local agency federal aid project prospect and supplement for the 2020 sidewalk improvement project. City Manager Hoyt.
Thank you, Mayor. Before you are our two sidewalk projects that have been hanging around since 2018 and 2019. The first one is the is resolution 2021-09. It relates to the the Safe Routes to School program. It's a $528,300 grant with a 10% with a $10,000 match from the Toppenish School District to do complete some sidewalk improvements on Beach, Pern, Ellensburg Avenue, and on Zilla, and also on F and G Street in that part of town around Lincoln School, as well as in Lincoln Park, some trail on the one side. Once again, that's a grant. What we're asking for is the local agency federal aid project prospectus and the supplement to the local programs state funding agreement. These are required documents by WashDOT local programs in order to go forward. Refresh council's memory, we did this last summer for the design portion of these projects. Now we're doing it for the construction portion of these projects. We were hoping to have them linked closer together last fall. However, COVID struck. WashDOT does not work out of the office anymore. They telecommute. They only go in once every 2 weeks. So that kind of slows this whole process down. As well as in the local programs department, they had 3 employees. The director, the head engineer took another job, so they had to recruit and replace his position. And one of the other engineer technicians retired, and they had to recruit and fill that position. So they're back at full staff, and they're caught up on some paperwork, and we're ready to go forward with the Safe Routes to School project, and that is state funding. So I guess I need a motion to approve resolution 2021-09, authorizing the city manager to sign the local agency project prospectus and the supplement local program agency agreement for the 2020 sidewalk improvements project, which is our Safe Routes to School project.
Make a motion, we do what he just said.
Thank you.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor from Councilwoman Jimenez and seconded by Councilman Garcia to approve resolution 2021-09, approve local agency federal aid project and prospectus and supplement for the 2020 sidewalk improvement project. Was there any further discussion? All in favor signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, we move on to item D. AB 21-013, Resolution 2021-10, approve local agency agreement supplement and local agency federal aid project prospectus for the West First Avenue Sidewalk Improvement Project. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a kind of a sibling project to the Safe Routes to School. This happens to be a West First Street sidewalk, which will start at Buena Way or Elm Street and go out to the west city limits on the south side of West First Street. This is a project that we got approved for funding about 4 years ago, and we're ready to go forward. We have all the required utilities moved, the power lines moved. We're ready to go forward with new curb, gutter, sidewalk, and handicap accessibility to this, basically from Carlson to the city limits there. It's a $182,775,000 grant project. This is STB set aside, so this is actually federal money. Our plan is to add both of these projects at the same time to get economy of scale, because one's pretty small, the other one's medium. Together, they're a good sized project. Hopefully we can get positive bids for these 2 projects. However, one is state, one is federal money. All the paperwork will be kept separate for the different funding agency requirements. So once again, I'm asking for a motion to approve resolution 2021-10, authorizing the city manager to sign the local agency state funding agreement supplement and the local agency federal aid project prospectus for the West First Avenue sidewalk project.
So moved.
Second.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Belton, seconded by Councilwoman Jimenez, to approve Resolution 2021-10, approve local agency agreement and supplement and local agency federal aid project prospectus for the West First Avenue Sidewalk Improvement Project. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by aye.
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 Thank you.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we move on to item 6E. Set agenda for the March 1st, 2021 study session. City Manager Hoyt.
We have two items for our study session tonight that we'd like to plan for. One is back in January 11th, we had a Toppenish Municipal Code amendment for chapters 5.65 that had to do with events, special events, and their related permits. So council wanted to bring that back to a study session for further discussion. So that would be one topic we would have. And the second topic is back in 2019, we had the EMS director, Tony Miller, along with Fire Chief Smith, come in and give us a presentation on the current state of the EMS ambulance I guess situation in Yakima County. Since then, we gave them a letter of support. They've gone forward and gone out for ads or for bids for ambulance service, and they're ready to start talking about where they're at after these requests for proposals and what the county may see in the near future in regards to ambulance service. And hopefully that would be about a 20-minute update. And so those are the two items I have for study session on March 1st. If anyone else has any other items they'd like to bring up?
You know, since Tim's coming in, I know at one time the fire chiefs were meeting on, I believe it was something to do with the rates. Remember how we went to Wapatu, you and I did, and talked with all those chiefs? Have they come up with an idea, with a plan, or is that something we talk about it since he's going to be there anyway?
That's a separate issue, and we can have him speak to that.
Okay.
I think they've decided that had to do with some levy funding that we had and how that was distributed. And I think the Yakima County fire departments have a new formula that'll happen the next time that goes to the vote of the people. So and I think that's in 2023. It's getting close. So
yeah, because I remember when we talked about it when we went to Wapatu. So
yeah,
just kind of an update as to where they're at would be good, because I know that they were kind of divided from the upper valley and the lower valley. We're kind of divided on that. At least that's what I remember. So it'd be nice to get back on that so we know where they're at.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we'll move on to item 7, council meeting reports and community announcements. We'll start with Councilman Seha.
I have nothing to report.
Councilman Garcia.
Yeah, I attended the City Action Days agenda on February 10th and 11th, and that was an all-day session. And I tell you what, I didn't realize there are a lot of people involved in this, and it was a great session and everything. What sessions I was able to log on to and decided to listen on and participate. And we had, towards the end of the first day, we had separate council members from different areas, and we got together and we discussed stuff that had affected up north and west of Seattle and everything. And then areas over here on the east side, and there are quite a bit of information we exchanged back and forth about the homeless population and stuff like that, and not fire, but PD and everything. It was quite interesting. You know, a lot of people got to listen to the governor give his speech at noontime, and everything. Got to listen to Governor Inslee and everything. And then Thursday did the same thing. Got to talk with some other people and everything. And then it was great. You know, next one comes up like that, I'm going to definitely sign up for it. You know, got to talk to a lot of good people, and a lot of ideas were thrown around, and you know, legislation and everything. And other than that, I did help with the food distribution on Fur in Washington Saturday. I took a few boxes to some people, that elderly people from they're doing their thing there at that church every Saturday from 10 to 12 and everything. And they give you a box, and it has meat, vegetables, cheese, sour cream, and butter. And so I took some boxes to my area because they asked me if I knew anybody in my area that would benefit from this, and that's what I did. So then during our snow, I cleaned out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lots for people with my snow blower and everything, which was elderly people. I knew they weren't going to be able to shovel it, so I just took my snow blower and went down and did a few lots for neighbors and everything. So that was quite. They all thanked me for doing it, because one of them said her back was hurting the first night she tried to shovel at night, of all things. No, I told her, don't do it. I'll take care of it from now on. So that's all I have to report.
Thank you. Councilman Belton.
Yeah, being as we dealt with a couple sidewalk projects tonight in my travels around town during the snow, I want to thank all the businesses that took the time to clear their sidewalks, and a few of the citizens. And I think maybe it's time we need to remind some people that if you have a sidewalk in front of your property, it's your responsibility to keep it clean. But the majority of our businesses, I was very, very proud to see that they were out there every day making sure things were good to go for our citizens. That's all I have.
All right. Councilman Jimenez.
I do have a few things. I have a list. You know how that goes. I did attend the Conference of Government meeting along with Heidi, Lance, and Al Hubert. Al goes because he's on the Planning Commission, and it's just great to have him there. And so all 4 of us attended. It was the shortest meeting ever. I think we were done in 30 minutes. That has never happened, let me tell you. 30 minutes in and out. We had a presentation by Karen Francis McWhite. She is the Central Washington Outreach Specialist for the Department of Commerce. And I know that Lance will speak more on it. I just want to touch on the fact that she has not forgotten about Toppenish. If you guys remember, they were going to have this community forum where they were going to come and talk to us, a group of people. I think it was about 20 some people, Lance, that were involved. But due to COVID, like, it was supposed to be like the day we shut down that we were supposed to all meet, but we couldn't meet because the governor shut us down. But she hasn't forgotten about us. She said we're one of 3 in the state who got this planning grant. And so I'm sure Lance will give you more specifics of that when he reports on the meeting. But she still remembered us, and I thought that was great to hear. Also want to remind people to go ahead and do the survey that we have going on. Lance, as you know I got the little card in the mail asking me to do the survey. So I did online. To the viewing public, there's a chance for you to win a gift card. I don't remember if it was like $200 gift card or something, but if you want to make a little money on the side, if you think you're lucky, go ahead and do the survey. Maybe your name will be drawn. So do the survey. The survey will help us out a lot. And then again, I want to thank our public works personnel for helping and working so hard during this, I call it the winter storm, when we had the snow out there. I saw them come out once with the gravel, and then later on I saw them downtown plowing. So again, that's extra work for them, and I want to thank them for doing the best that they could do with the circumstances that were at hand. So thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Councilwoman DeVaul.
Yeah, and I just want to say, if you need someone to shovel your snow, call George. And along with what Councilmember Jimenez was saying, this is the little postcard that we got in the mail, and this is what it looked like. Okay, and the way you use it is you get your phone and you act like you're going to take a picture of it, and it reads these little squares. Something will pop up, click on it, and take the survey. So please get it done. It's important for our community and for housing equity here in Toppenish. That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
But if you're old school like me, because I couldn't figure out the phone thing, just get online and do it on the www.hpp, whatever. Type all that in and you can get there.
Very good.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Saavedra.
I have nothing to report for the good of the order.
And I have nothing to report. So then we'll move on to item 8, City Manager's Report.
Okay.
City Manager Hoyt.
Yeah, I also attended the YB-COG dinner, and let's see, Karen Francis McWhite was there, and she was the program. She's from Department of Commerce, and yeah, Toppenish is still on the list to go forward with our community priority meetings with the stakeholders. I talked with her last Friday about that, and we're hoping that maybe when we get to phase 3, we'll have that opportunity to get going. So we're thinking we're going to be in a holding pattern until May, and then see when we could have that opportunity to get that program going. Maybe we'll be able to figure out how to blend that program with the YB-COG housing priority program. They kind of complement each other. So maybe we'll be able to do 2 things at once there. So that's kind of the hope that we're going to go forward and do. And let's see. I'm so efficient, I've lost my my report here. You bring it back up. There we go. Why does it do that? Get rid of that. Okay, give a police chief vacancy update. I called everyone last week to inform them that we engaged the Prothman Company to assist us. They're right on the ball, and they're very proactive. This week they'll be having a meeting with a select group of people that are in our organization. We have a couple council members, some department heads, some police department personnel, to get kind of a feel for what our community and what our city and what our police department is looking for in a police chief. And so that's going to be this week, and that's running concurrent. They have the on the Prothman Company website as well as the city website. We have posted the profile and the job announcement, basically, which is the profile, which is the job announcement for the police chief for the city of Toppenish, as well as the job spec that relates to that. That's going to be that's ongoing from now till March 21st is when that application closes. That's 3 weeks, actually 4 weeks. The next part of the schedule between March 22nd and 29th, Prothman will screen all the applications and sort them down to the top 8 to 15 applicants. Then they'll compile the portfolios on each of those people. They'll share those with the city, and we'll discuss those items and hopefully get that semi-finalists down internally down to 3 to 6 people. Then at that time, which will be April 5th, that week of April 5th to the 9th, hopefully we'll be able to set up a Zoom meeting for a work session with the semi-finalists and discuss the final interview process, which would hopefully happen if all things are rolling together would be April 19th, the week of April 19th, and the April 26th. They'll travel to Toppenish. They'll come here. We'll have the final interview process, and hopefully have some. We'll see where we are at that time, if we can have public meet and greet, or maybe we'll just have to do an invite as a special meeting and invite the public to come online and have a virtual meet and greet. So that's kind of the process that we have. Let's see, we have Mr. Bardwell has agreed to stay on until we place our new, we hire our new police chief, and hopefully stay on until the end of that month to help him in his transition period. And so there's kind of the update on that. I'll keep people filled in as that process matures. The second item I have tonight is the Public Works Office and Vehicle Storage. We had a bid opening on the 3rd of February. It came in higher than the architect's estimate by about $400,000. We were amazed that it came in that high. We queried the contractors, and we found that one of the main reasons for the high costs were any building component made of wood has almost tripled in price. An example was a bunk of 2x6s for studs on the walls that used to be $320 for $1,000, have now jumped up to over $1,200 a bunk. And so those are very high, and that follows suit with numerous other products that are going to be needed for this building process. We asked why. We thought, what was their opinion? Why? The wood stuff happened because of forest fires that happened, not to mention, and in conjunction with COVID. With that suppressed supply. The lumber companies couldn't work due to COVID, so they didn't make the lumber. The manufacturers weren't there making the products because they were impacted. So between forest fires, COVID, and the new, every time there's a new federal administration, there's a change in pricing and those types of things. So right now it's kind of I guess a casualty of supply and demand. There's a low supply and high demand, and so those prices are up. So what we're doing now is we're going back and we're revisiting that scope of work on the project. We're going to reduce it down to the point where hopefully we can get a building and an office building that are within the funding constraints that we have available. Hopefully we'll have that done by the end of this week. We'll go back out to add next week for that 2-week period, I think, that we have to do, and we'll bring those the results of that back to council, hopefully toward the end of March, in April sometime instead of March. So that's kind of a depressing news, I thought, but at least we know where we stand on that. We did query some contractors to find out where we could save money, and we'll probably take their comments as we do that reduction in scope. So that's the Public Works update. The West First Street Sidewalk project and the Safe Routes to School project, we plan to go to add in March and hopefully start that in April and have those projects done by midsummer. And we'll have those done. The extreme weather shelter update, there really is none. We did have a real ugly week weather-wise, and I was waiting back to hear if the people using, if the population went up higher. We're assuming it did with the bad weather, and so they wanted to wait and see how it is with lesser bad weather this week to see if that occupancy drops down. But they were able to service or help the people that they had. No additional EMS or police calls out of the ordinary there. Also attended the city action days. It was always exciting and a good opportunity to network. Councilman Garcia visited about the networking, how it was important. Basically, what we came out of that was budget is the big concern. They have to figure out the budget is dependent now on the fish culvert program that we're required to comply with. That's going to take a lot of money out of the transportation budget. The shift from transportation is switching from constructing new projects all over the state to preservation and maintenance of our existing projects. Then green projects were coming up, even it's to the point where they have to start replacing the ferry fleet, and they're looking at starting with some green ferries, I guess, to be able to save fuel but still maintain the ferry program. And if you notice that the flags are at half staff, they'll be half staff, I think, for this week. And that's to honor the in remembrance of the COVID pandemic lives lost so far. We hit the 500,000 mark today or yesterday. So that's sad news, but the flags are at half staff. Think of those people and their families. And that's all I have tonight.
Okay, we'll move on to item 9 is adjournment.
That's a good one.
I want y'all to hear it. Put a hole in the desk.
See you Monday. Bye.
Have a good evening, everyone.